So you think you're a trick shot god, huh? Well, let me tell you, there's a lot more you gotta learn about these new bouncy tiles because it's freaking insanity whenever they're on a map. So you're gonna need to change up your trick shot game in order to include these bouncy tiles, and I'll tell you exactly how to do that. At the end, I'm gonna go over some concrete examples, but first let's go over exactly how these bouncy things work, because I think it's a lot different from what you might expect. So whenever a ball hits one of these bouncers, it's going to get kicked back in a different direction with the same force as a super kick. So like if you just used your super on the ball, it's going to travel the same distance as if you were to bounce the ball off a bouncer tile. Keep in mind, this isn't dependent on how fast the ball is moving when it hits the bouncer tile. It will still bounce the same distance no matter how fast the ball is moving when it makes contact. And there's a lot of bounce mechanics in the game, like, Sprout's attack. They can only bounce a finite number of times, but the thing about the bouncer tiles is that they can go on infinitely. So the ball can just keep getting bounced and bounced and bounced and bounced. Well, assuming I actually aimed that correctly, it is possible. So this lets you make some really cool plays because you can get the ball to travel across the entire court in a matter of seconds. And trust me, if you thought trick shotting was fun, there's no better feeling than scoring a goal from the literal opposite side of the field. But the one janky thing you have to consider about these bouncer tiles is that their hitbox isn't actually a circle, even though they look like a circle, obviously. Now, what I mean by that is that typically bouncing objects will follow the law of reflection. They have an angle at which they hit a flat surface, and then they're going to bounce off at that exact same angle. This is what happens whenever you're dealing with literally any flat surface, and this is how it works in game as well. You can see no matter what angle you kick the ball from, it's always going to bounce back at that exact same angle. Now with circles, the same thing still applies in real life. It's just that since you're not hitting a flat surface, you measure it at the tangent line at which the ball makes contact with this circle. So that means if you hit a circle in, say the southeast direction, then the way it will bounce off is based off of the angle it hits measured against this tangent line, which is perpendicular to the southeast direction. But in Brawl Stars, that's just not how it works. Each of these bouncer tiles has a square hitbox because, I don't know, Supercell just wants to screw with us, I guess. So basically, no matter where you hit the front side of this bouncer tile, it's always going to bounce back, assuming you're hitting the front face of a square. So this is going to behave the exact same as if I was hitting this wall here, where we always measure the line of reflection to be just the front face of the wall. Now, even though this is a circle, that line that we're measuring the angle off of stays the same. So it's just as if it was the front face of a box. And the same goes for every single side of this bouncer tile. So if you were to actually hit the corner of this bouncer tile, it's just gonna bounce straight back, which is not how physics works, but it is how Brawl Stars physics works. And that's just the sort of physics you gotta adjust your trick shots to. But on the bright side, that does make aiming a lot easier because bouncing a ball off a flat face is a lot more predictable than bouncing off a curved face. You can see the resulting endpoint of my aiming line here doesn't change all that much depending on where I hit the front side of this flat face. But trust me, if this was an actual curved face, the ending line would be all over the place because curves just make things go in crazy directions. And so it would be a lot harder to aim. So I think Brawl Stars did this because it just makes it easier to aim when you're trying to bounce your shots off of these tiles. But now let's put this stuff into action and take a look at the 3 new Brawl Ball maps that have these bounce tiles, and we'll talk about a lot of different ways that you can trick shot off of these tiles. First, let's take a look at the map Extra Bouncy. It's very, very difficult to actually score a goal off of these bounce tiles because of this giant wall in front of the goal. So once this wall is removed, you can basically just bounce off of any of these sides of the bouncers, and it will usually go straight into the goal. But before that happens, it is very, very difficult. Now, if you're able to get the ball onto the top side of this bouncer, you can just have it bounce straight into the goal like that. But it's very, very hard to actually get the ball onto that side of the bouncer without having some lucky bounce off of another one of the bouncers first, or, whatever, because otherwise you have to sort of be in front of the tile already to get to this front side of the bouncer, and if you're already in front of the tile, you might as well just kick it straight into the goal. Unless, of course, you just want to style on your opponents, which is perfectly valid. Psychological warfare is very effective in Brawl Stars. People tilt all the time. But other than that, the only way you could think of to actually score a goal using these bounce tiles is to just barely skim it off the side of this bouncer here. Well, that didn't work. And then it stopped short of the goal. So It's not really possible. I don't think it is possible unless you hit this face of this bouncer tile, and doing that is kind of impossible in game unless you're already guaranteed to get a goal, like I said before. But these other maps give you opportunities to actually make a goal where you wouldn't be able to otherwise by using these bouncers. So on high score, you can bounce off of this tile right here. This one's a bit tight, but if you get it to make it past the wall, the ball will, well, stop in front of the goal. There we go, we finally got it. Like I said, it's very, very particular, but that is the harder trick shot to do. The easier one comes when we focus on the other bounce tile. Because for this one, all we need to do is just bounce it off the side, and it's just going to go straight into the center area and should be able to easily score. There's really not a lot of precision involved in this one. You just have to hit that particular face of that bounce tile. And, you know, I am talking about them in terms of faces because they are basically squares, even though they look like circles. I know it's really confusing. I'm sorry, but that's just how it works. And then like on the other map, if you hit the top side of these tiles, you can also get it into the goal, but you can actually do that without being in front of the tiles on this map because you can bounce off the bottom side of this upper bounce tile, and that's gonna let you hit the top face of the bouncer tile that's closer to your side. So if you do that, well, let's try that again. So if you do that just right, you'll be able to make a goal, but it's a bit tight. Anything that involves this bouncer right here is going to be a little tight, and so it's kind of unreliable to do it in game, but you know, maybe if you practice it enough, you can get really good at it and be able to do it consistently. I certainly cannot. And now we get to the biggest meme of all. It's ping pong time, everybody. Now, for this map, you pretty much always just want to focus on this bounce tile because if you want to get into the goal, you're almost always going to have to go through that bouncer to make it in. But if you do hit that bouncer on that particular side face, it's pretty much guaranteed to go in. There's a lot of wiggle room to work with. Now, it is also possible to make it in by bouncing off of this tile, similar to the second bouncer on high score, but it is also very particular. I'm just a goat though, so I got it on my first try. Definitely not the second time I recorded this. But of course, that's not all with ping pong. There are so many other ways you can get the ball to hit one of those two bouncers, but particularly the one that's farther back because it's a lot easier to get it in if you hit that bouncer. And one of my favorite ways to do it, at least consistently, is to just zigzag through all of these different bouncers and go back and forth and back and forth. Now, the way to do this, because they're all squares, is you just have to hit the exact center of their side faces. And to start off, you want to send the ball at an angle that the zigzag needs to be at. What I mean by that is you basically have to start the ball on the zigzag path at that perfect angle. So the easiest way to do this is to just place yourself in between the diagonal line connecting the first two bouncers, and then just send the ball along that diagonal and make sure that your aiming line ends up in the center of the next bouncer's face. And if everything goes perfectly, it should hit the perfect face and go right in. I mean, talk about style. That's peak trick-shotting content right here. Your opponents are never gonna expect it. Just don't let them see you spending 20 seconds trying to get that shot set up.